4, verses 9 through 12. Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken.
Wasn't afraid to take over Colby last week, but wasn't about to step Baby's way today. What a wonderful time we've already had in the city of Brighton. Last Sunday evening, you poured out your heart, your love, and so many gifts and well wishes and things. We were so blessed and thankful, my wife and I. And she said, "Be sure and say, I already told the elders I don't do announcements when I get up to preach, but when it's my wife that tells me, you get up there and tell them thank you." And so I do want to say thank you so much for the outpouring of love and how you've made us so welcome here. We think about those passages, those words from Ecclesiastes. Two are better than one. We understand that idea because he says they have a good reward for their toil. Or there in verse 4 when he says that though a man might prevail against one who is lone, two can withstand him. A threefold cord is not easily or quickly broken. We understand the idea of strength in numbers. In fact, mankind has been exploiting the power of collective strength of mankind for a long time. There are cave paintings that show men and women fighting in groups in order to bring down large game like dinosaurs and elephants. We know that wonders of the world like the Great Pyramids of Egypt or even the Great Wall of China or Stonehenge were only accomplished because many people came together. Now, we might argue that during some of those that it was the masters and the slaves, and they were bringing many slaves together. But even if it's slavery or if it's free men working together, when people get together in a large workforce, there's a lot of things that we can do. Collective power physically cannot exceed the sum of its parts. That means if you've got two men and each can lift only 100 pounds, the total they could possibly lift would be 200 pounds together. But when it comes to the church, God is able to take the collective power of individuals and multiply and multiply and multiply. If we were going to use it in the physical realm, it's as if to say that one man can lift 100 pounds and another man can lift 100 pounds. Together they can lift 1,000 pounds. Why? Because God is infusing them with a greater power than the sum of their parts. You know, God has designed the church as an organization of people to distribute His great message of love through Christ. We see at the very beginning of the gospel that God's intention is to save mankind. Jesus comes to this earth. He lives a life of perfect sinlessness. And in the end, He is crucified, not because of any sin or any crime that He has committed, but because He has become the Passover lamb for mankind. And that is the message that we speak. And God has designed this church, this organization, as the only body which is to go out and preach and teach that message. No other organization is tasked with this responsibility. No institution can take over this responsibility for us. It belongs to the church and the church alone. It is not government's responsibility. It is not Hollywood's responsibility. It is not the public school's responsibility. It is not some publishing house's responsibility. It is the church's responsibility. And how did God see fit to accomplish that? How did He do it? Well, He takes these individuals. This person who in himself and of himself cannot accomplish the great things, but then He adds to that all of these other individuals. We become the collective power of the church. And God said, I've got a mission for you. I've got to send you out and with a task. And so when the church works together collectively and cohesively, God works through us to magnify our accomplishments. Now that we are together. So that's the theme. Last week we looked at the idea of let's go to heaven. It's really the only thing that matters. It means that every activity that we engage in, everything that we study, everywhere that we go, everyone that we interact with, should all be done with a view to heaven, to something beyond this earth, to the heavenly realm. And that's going to, how we do this is going to impact our eternity. Today we want to turn the page, keeping with the same theme of now that we are together. Getting to heaven means that we are going to fulfill God's commission toward us. His mission of benevolence and edification and evangelism that we've talked about and studied about many times in the church, it rests solely upon His church. And that means it behooves us. It is up to us to change the world for Christ. So today, now that we are together, let's save the lost. You know, evangelism. It's one of those words that it gets bandied about a lot of the church. We don't really, we talk a lot about it. We have a lot of classes on it, but it seems like the actual implementation, the actual doing of evangelism sometimes escapes us. And so this morning we want to look at evangelism. And first of all, we see that evangelism is needed. It is needed because it is God's command. Think about Matthew 28, the last chapter of the book of Matthew, verses 9, 19, and 20, when He says, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." And sometimes we run through those last three phrases there. Behold, I am with you unto the end of the age. The idea here is not just that Christ's presence is with us, but that as we engage in the preaching and the teaching of the gospel, as we are reaching out and we are evangelizing, as we are making disciples, Jesus is with us. See, what one of us or two of us can do by ourselves or individually is multiplied and magnified times and times over because Jesus is with us. And what He's saying is, watch me. You don't see it if I'm not with you when you're engaged in the Lord's work. You know, many times as the church we get together and we do certain activities and certain projects, either for our community or for the church and in other realms. And it's not hard to see that Jesus is there in the midst of us, right? Even whenever we're going through trials and tribulations and hard times, like times of church discipline. In Matthew chapter 18, you remember when He says that where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. In that particular context, what He's actually saying is when you have to withdraw as the church from someone who is unruly, I'm with you even then. I'm there with you when you have to make that decision. And when you go out and you're preaching the gospel, I'm there with you. And when you're sitting across the kitchen table with someone who is lost and needs the love of Christ and needs to know that their sins have been forgiven and knows that there is a heaven and they're seeking for something deeper and you're offering that to them, I am there with you. And when the church comes together and does these things, Christ is there with us today, tomorrow, what He would say to the end of the age. We need evangelism because it is God's commandment. But evangelism is needed in our lives because people are saved by it. It's not just that we go out because God commanded. We go out because people are lost. One of my favorite verses in all the Bible comes in the one chapter book of Jude. Jude in verse 23 when he says, "Save others by snatching them out of the fire, showing mercy with fear, hating even the garments that are stained with flesh." Jude is wrapping up his letter, and he's identified, that there are these ungodly people out there. Watch out for these ungodly people and all their ungodly actions and all their ungodly thoughts and all the ungodly things that they do. He doesn't want you to mistake that he's talking about ungodly people. He says, but you're the godly. You're the ones that know me. You're the ones that have a relationship with me. And you're going out and you're teaching. And he says, some of them you save with fear, snatching them out of the fire. Imagine sitting around a campfire. Entire family, it's kind of the night has come on and it's getting dark and maybe we got s'mores out and everything. And one of the kids is there and they've got the marshmallow over. Oh, it's caught on fire. And they reach over toward the burning marshmallow and they fall into the fire. What would you do? You're the mom, you're the dad, you're sitting there, your child is just falling into the fire. And you say, well, they'll get up. That'll be all right. Or you can ask them smart in the morning. No. We're sensible people. We would jump up immediately. We would grab that child from the flames and we would save its life, right? And it would be you want a definition of snatching. That's what he says here. Snatching them out of the fire, what we don't see. And I wish that we could, if we could see the world as God sees it. If we could look out and those who are walking by the building or driving by and we could see them erupting in flames because of the hell that they are destined to because they're lost. If the people you see in the grocery store were walking around on flame, maybe then we would understand the urgency of sharing the gospel message, of saying there is hope even for you and snatching them out of what? Out of the fire. Unfortunately, we don't see the flames like that most of the time. And so we don't react with the urgency that Jude wants us to react with. We need evangelism because people are saved by evangelism. There's no other way. They're not going to go to the grocery store and see on a milk carton someone that says, lost because of their sins. And it's their own picture. They realize, I've got to be saved. No. They have to come face to face with someone who loves them and loves God, that's willing to say, there's hope. In a world that is burned by fire, there's hope. But we also need evangelism because Jesus is imitated by it. Right? One of the purposes that he came for, I like Luke chapter 19. We have the story of Zacchaeus, the wee little man, of course, and he was a publican. He was hated by his fellow man, by the entire community. We hate you. We don't like the way you do it. We don't like the extortion. We don't like the violence. We don't like that you represent Rome. We hate publicans. That's how they were, the tax collector. They were the dogs of society at that time. And here's Zacchaeus, a tiny tax collector who wields great power over all the community by extracting from them their taxes and giving them to Rome, a constant reminder that they are under the thumb of a Roman emperor. Jesus comes to him and goes to his house, and of course, Zacchaeus repents of his sin. Whatever I have extorted, whatever I've done wrong, I will give back. I will give it back. All of it and more. And then, of course, it says in verse 10 about Jesus. Why would Jesus come to someone like Zacchaeus? Why? Because Jesus came to seek and save that which was lost. You see, he came specifically to save men like Zacchaeus, like Nicodemus. And when we turn around and evangelize, we are imitating Christ to the greatest degree. Because that's why he came. You remember Paul would say in 1 Corinthians 11, be imitators of me as I'm an imitator of Christ. Well, how can I imitate Christ? The greatest way we can, brethren, is to preach the gospel. Is to evangelize. There's a lot of things you can do. You raise your family right, and that's good. Don't want to knock that. You can teach your children. Wonderful. Good. You can work hard at your job and bring honor and glory to God in the things that you do every day in your career. Great. But nowhere do we imitate Christ more closely than we're telling someone about the good news. Evangelism is needed. But evangelism is also action. And this is kind of more the practical side of this lesson. Evangelism is action. It means that we're doing something, right? Evangelism is not passive. It is active. It is something that we must do. And so I'm going to give you 4 ideas here, and then we'll call it a day. But the first one is the idea of develop something. Develop something. You know, evangelism is an action. That means you, as a person, need to develop something. There are a lot of excellent tools out there to help you evangelize. There are all kinds of study tracks like the Open Bible Study or the Home Bible Study series or Back to the Bible, Fishers of Men. Those are wonderful, wonderful tools. And if you are well versed in them, use them. They're great. The Jewel Miller film strips, one of the best evangelists I know in the church today, uses the old Jewel Miller film strips, not the ones that have been remade on the DVD to make it easier. He drags a film strip projector into someone's home and bing, bing, and he's amazing at it. Right? There are those who prefer DVDs like the Searching for Truth, or like to use the internet like World Video Bible School, and there are free videos that are available online at any given time. Correspondence, where there's all kinds of methods out there. And through the time of growing up in the church, there were people who were saying, well, this is the best method to use. Use this one. This is the best method to use. This one works well with this one. Let me tell you, the best method for you to use is the one that you will actually use. That's it. If it's a DVD, use the DVD. If it's an open Bible study, use open Bible. Whatever you are comfortable with. Because you see, if it doesn't make sense to me, if it's confusing to me, if it's too hard for me to understand and work through, or if I just think it's silly, or if it's burdensome, I'm going to be less likely to do it, right? And so don't try to get someone else's idea and say, well, it works for Joe over here, I'm going to do Joe's method. Well, if Joe's method works for you, fine, but if it doesn't, develop what does work for you. Develop something that plays into your skills and your talents and your personality. Ask questions. There are a lot of people like to start with asking questions. If that's your style, get you a couple of questions you always ask. Develop a plan. Develop something that is comfortable for you. Door knocking. Some people love door knocking. Some people hate door knocking. I've heard people say, well, door knocking doesn't work. Well, door knocking works better than nothing. And that's what a lot of people do, is nothing. And so maybe it's just one step above nothing, but it's something, right? It's something. Develop something. Maybe you're the kind of person who likes to go to a grocery store, that intentional bumping into someone's car. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, by the way, did you know that Jesus saves? Well, maybe it's not quite that direct, but maybe you've got another way to do it. Okay. But maybe it's someone in a grocery store or someone in a restaurant. I know people that like to leave big tips at a restaurant and put a card in there. Maybe it's a Searching for Truth card where they can go directly online and watch the videos, or maybe it's an invitation to a Bible study that you have at your home, or maybe it's just a note that says, hey, great service, and we'd love to see you over here, over there. Those are things, and if it works for you, do it. There was one man I remember sitting in a restaurant in Tennessee, and it was a barbecue of all places, because I love barbecue. So this guy walks up to me, and he's got a royal flush in his hand. It's a card, or 5 cards, and he's walking around, and he has this whole story about the Jack and the Queen and the king and all this, and all of a sudden he whips it open, and they're all kings, or some little magic sleight of hand, and you're like, oh, that's cool, and he says, of course, Jesus is the King of Kings, and so he uses this silly magic trick to open the door to speak of Jesus as the King of Kings, and so people. You have to develop something and make it your art. Make it what signifies you, and what you develop may not be what I develop, and that's fine. That's okay. I'm fine with you developing your own way, as long as you will use it. Think about Acts chapter 17 in verse 2 when Paul comes into Thessalonica, and it says that Paul went in as it was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them from the Scripture. Paul as his what? As his custom was. Was that Peter's custom? No. Was it John's custom? No. It was Paul's. He developed it for his personality and his style and the work that he was doing. Brethren, we are called to do the same thing. Let's develop something in our tool bag. Right? Number 2, you got to plan something. It's an old adage I learned a long time ago. Failing to plan is planning to fail. If we are not making a plan for how we're going to accomplish something, we're saying and admitting that we plan to fail. We don't really intend to accomplish it. Saying about evangelism, well, evangelism is something that just naturally happens. And then guess what? Nature never takes its course. And we never get around to it. With rarity does it ever actually happen that way. You know, the writer of Ecclesiastes said something else. In chapter 11, verse 4, he said, "He who observes the wind will never sow, and he who regards the clouds will never reap." In other words, that man is looking for the perfect opportunity to sow his field. He's looking for the perfect opportunity to reap his field. And he says if he's looking for the perfect day, where the wind is just right, the temperature's not too hot, and it's not too cold. It's not too dry, and it's not too wet. Right? If you're looking for the perfect day, when does it come? He says you'll never get it sown. If you're looking for the perfect conditions, you will never get it reaped. If we're looking for the perfect natural occurrence for evangelism to occur, it will never happen. That means we need to make a plan. Make a plan to make it happen. Notice Paul's plans. He goes where people are. He goes to the synagogue, to the riverside, to the marketplace, to Mars Hill. He's got a plan. I'm going to make it happen. I'm not just going to sit back and let it naturally occur. I'm going to make it happen. And so he goes where he knows he can engage people. He sought to create those opportunities. So now that we're together, let's make a plan to evangelize personally and congregationally, maybe with just some small groups, but let's make a plan instead of just saying, well, it'll just happen naturally. Now again, we already have a lot of things in place here at the church. I understand. We've got the newslettering on Thursday, and door knocking on Saturday, and that's great. Those are wonderful things. Some of you say, well, that's not really my cup of tea. That's fine. It doesn't have to be your cup of tea. But find a cup of tea and drink it. Number 3, let's build something. The most effective means of evangelism, this is bar none, the one with the greatest success rate from the 1st century to the 21st century, is evangelism across the relationships that you already have. That's it. Someone you're dating, someone you're married to, your own children, your co-workers. Obviously, there's some cases out there where perfect strangers met each other and struck up a conversation about salvation, and lo and behold, someone was saved. I understand. But that is a rarity. Most people come to the gospel because of someone they already know. Children because of their parents. My little show with Michael because of Randall. There's relationships. And so one of the best things you can do in evangelism is meet people and build those relationships. Since the vast majority of people obey the gospel or were exposed by someone within their personal circle, then that means each one of us has in our personal circle prospects for evangelism, people who need the gospel. And the more people we meet, guess what? The bigger our circle gets. And the bigger our circle gets, the more opportunities we have. The more opportunities there are, the more converts there will be. Now think about this. If I have this circle of influence, and Mike has this circle of influence, overlaps mine somewhat, but he knows some people that I don't know. I know some people that Mike doesn't know, right? And then Sam has another circle, right? Les has got another circle. What are we doing? We're creating a net. And it's interesting. In the Bible, when it talks about fishing, you know what they fished with? It wasn't the rod and reel, was it? It was the net. God said, I will make you what? Fishers of men. This is our net right here. This is it. Us working together, seining and trolling the highways and the byways of this world so that we can catch as many people as possible. Paul, he in Acts chapter 16, he goes to the riverside where he meets Lydia, and he starts to engage Lydia on where she is and how she's praying and what she needs, and ultimately crosses that bridge of relationship where she is saved. And so now that we're together, let's build something. Let's build some relationships at our, where we have our recreation, where we work, and our family and our friends. And let's define those relationships with genuine love and righteousness. You see, that's the key. It's not just to know someone, but it's to know someone and show them love and concern and compassion, to meet their needs. See, that's what we're doing. It's not just, hey, it's nice to meet you. Go about your life and never meet again. It's fine. It's urgent that we cross that relationship, because our personal circle will be the best source of our confidence. And then finally, number 4, say something. Perhaps the most important part here is just say something. Maybe you've never done this, but I have. I'll freely admit it. Meet someone and strike up a conversation with them, and things are going well. They seem very congenial toward us. Maybe we have some like-minded ideas, and not necessarily about Christianity or anything. We just, we're both talking about hay rakes. We're, defining which one's the best kind of hay rake. I don't know. We're talking about something. We're understanding one another. And in the back of my mind, I keep saying to myself, all right, now's the time. Spring the gospel on him. You got to tell him about the gospel now. You got to find out where he goes to. You do all this, and it's in the back of my mind, and I'm wrestling with myself to even say those words. It's almost like I know I have to. I know I need to. And the conversation rolls from hay rakes to swathers, and we haven't made any progress toward the gospel. And I'm still thinking to myself, say something. And I don't always say something. I would be embarrassed to tell you how often I don't say something. And I don't know if it's because I'm afraid I'm going to offend them. I don't know if I think to myself and I reason it this way, well, this is kind of an awkward moment. It's not really a good time. I really need to know more about these swathers or whatever. Maybe I'm thinking, well, how do you go from baling hay to the gospel? What's that link? I don't know, and I'm not sure what to say. Or maybe I think, well, maybe he just doesn't want to hear any of this. He doesn't care. He's a farmer. He probably has too much to do. I don't want to make him angry. And I talk myself out of those words. And I don't say something. I don't say something. Most of the things that we fear about evangelism will never come true. The things that the devil reasons inside our head and keeps us from speaking, or at least speaking the words that are necessary, there's nothing to be afraid about. And even if you don't develop a style, and even if you don't plan something, and even if you have not built these relationships, the key to evangelism is to say something. And what I have found in my years is that it's almost impossible to say the wrong thing. Believe it or not. We think, we want to make sure we say the right thing. It's practically impossible to say the wrong thing. Because just opening this can is an amazing adventure to salvation for so many people. Think about some of Jesus' great opening lines. If we're going to say something, think about some of my favorites. Give me a drink. I'm sure Jesus is not sitting back and developing a plan in his mind saying, you know what, my opening line is going to be give me a drink. No. In that moment, at that time, judging the situation, give me a drink. He just says, and you remember how shocked that woman was in John chapter 4? How can you, being a Jew and a man, speak to me, a woman of Samaria? The Jews and the Samaritans have no relationship. It is against cultural norms for strange men to talk to strange women, and yet you have broken those norms and said something. And you know where that went? Zacchaeus, come down. He's not waiting for that opportunity, evangelistic moment when someone's in a tree and he says, okay, I've got the perfect line for this. You come down from the tree. That's not what he's thinking. But in that moment, just saying something spurred Zacchaeus to salvation. I love this one in Mark chapter 5, where he's with Jairus and they're going toward his house in order to heal his daughter. And the woman who has an issue of blood comes up and touches his garment. And Jesus stops the entire train of people. Who touched my garments? You see, it's practically impossible to say the wrong things because those words lead to salvation. Unless one is born again, he can't see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus was saved, or to the blind man, go and wash in the pool of Siloam. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you say to start the conversation. If you've ever agonized in that moment, maybe there's no conversation going on. You're sitting in one place and there's a person sitting next to you. Maybe it's a doctor's office. Maybe it's a train station. I don't know. But you're both not doing anything. Nothing important. And you wrestle with yourself and say something. Say something. Say something. Evangelism begins with those words. Even if it's how do you do? Or nice weather today. Say something. Now that we are together, let's save the lost. That's part of our going to heaven. Let's do something because evangelism is action. And this moment that God has brought us together at this time in the history of the church at Brighton, this is an opportunity. It's not like this has never happened before. This is just one opportunity for us to dedicate ourselves to the Lord's commission that we are to go out and preach the gospel unto every living creature. Let's do that. But some of you are out of commission. Maybe you've fallen away and you're struggling to come back. And since in your life you're thinking, I've got to get these things right before I can come back. You need to come back and let Christ work in your life and get those things right. Maybe you're not a child of God at all. Maybe you've not even had your commission given to you. That's because you never obeyed the gospel. I don't say this out of meanness or spite, but out of love, because this morning you have a chance. You have an opportunity to change your lot in life, your situation before God. This morning you can obey the gospel and get to know God and build the first primary relationship you need with Him so that you can start building relationships with others who are lost. This morning you're only outside or out of commission. Would you come and join the forces of the stand?
It's so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise, just